Call to order the regular Planning Commission meeting. It's 5:31 on March 19th, 2024. The land that we know as Sequim was once inhabited solely by First Peoples known as the S'Klallam people, represented by the three tribal governments, Lower Elwha S'Klallam, Jamestown S'Klallam, and Port Gamble S'Klallam. We serve as stewards of the land within the city of Sequim with the same care and consideration the S'Klallam tribes has and continues to provide. This acknowledgement is a respect to the S'Klallam people and their history. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide guidance and direction for Sequim's future growth through a continued review and improvement to Sequim's comprehensive plan, zoning code, shoreline management, environmental protection, and related land use documents. The Planning Commission will have all of the powers and perform each and all of the duties specified by Chapter 35A.63 RCW as amended and set forth or amended by ordinance. Roll call.
Commissioner
Emily.
Carter. Sorry.
Present.
Commissioner Coots.
Present.
Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Fain.
Present.
Commissioner Hewitt. Commissioner Mihalik.
Here. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next is approval of minutes. This would be for our regular meeting on March 5th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to read and review the minutes? And if so, are there any corrections? Yes, Commissioner Frayne.
Yes, there was just an omission in the roll call of the presence of Jeff Carter and Alex Fain. That's all.
Okay,
That has since been fixed. I noticed that too after the fact.
okay. Any other corrections? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of March 5th.
Thank you.
As amended?
As amended or?
As amended.
As amended, okay. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, the minutes stand approved as amended. Okay, guys, buckle up. This is a huge agenda tonight. Public comment. General public comment will be heard at this time. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. For those wishing to speak on the public hearing topics, please hold those comments until that portion of the meeting, which we don't have any public hearing tonight, but do we have anybody in the room? I'm not seeing anybody that would like to offer public comment. And also, Emily, is there anybody online?
There's no one online.
Okay. And no one in the room? Okay, that would like to offer public comment. Okay. And we have no general business. We have no new business, which brings us to item 8, the director's report. We have one item on there, interim controls. So Sharice?
Yes, thank you. Well, tonight for the interim controls discussion, it's the 1732-110, 2 points of access required. We have a consultant, Transpo Group, working on connectivity policies and codes. And I just received an email right before this that said, staff, please take a look at this. We're not quite ready for it to be public yet. So I was hoping that I would have that ready for a little bit more discussion, but generally they're covering the comprehensive plan, the transportation master plan, and municipal code ordinances to take a look at connectivity so that the code can be updated with criteria that gives more direction for connectivity. And that's for like looking at the planning and the evaluation of the comprehensive plan in a way that says, hey, here's some policies that were designed and some recommendations in that vision for what that connectivity looks like. And here's how that, looking at ways that we implement transportation code, and Transpo Group does this all over Washington, how you might want to put some language in your code. So our plan is to take a look at that and dive deep into that with them, and then start drafting some code language to go along with it to bring back to you. With the interim controls right now, we're set to expire at the end of April. So we want to extend that interim control. So we'll be drafting language to take that back to council for extension. Because once we have that code language ready to go, we'll need to send it to Department of Commerce, do the SEPA on it, and then work with the code language and get your recommendations for council for that final public hearing. So that's where we are with that. It's been in the works for a long time. We've had to slow roll that a little bit for some other items that were more prominent, but I think it's coming back, and we're hoping to, I don't want to take it, the full 6 months past the extension, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time, probably June by the time it's ready. So sorry, we don't have a lot of details, and I will share that once we're ready, most likely at the next meeting, to provide that. Any questions about interim controls for the splitter? Okay. I do have a couple other items.
I have a
Oh,
question just for clarification.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that the reason why we are looking at the splitter is because it's not efficient at this point. And so we're creating language that allows for more connectivity and something that is more.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it looks like connectivity from a planning perspective. It looks like at the it looks at the transportation tech specs, or that the engineers use, and it looks at fire code and accessibility. So those are the three things that we were asked to look into.
Okay. And this is another one of my assumptions. So please clarify if it's not correct, but I'm assuming that with the way that it's written right now with just the splitter, it really doesn't technically provide 2 points of access, because essentially it's just one, right?
It's
with
just
something in the
one,
middle.
and it's being applied in the same way that, so the 2 points of access with a splitter in the middle isn't really 2 points of access at all, right? Is kind of the thought. And it doesn't really do a very good job to meet the direction or the visionary recommendation of the comprehensive plan. So that was a subjective thing that we needed to evaluate, and I couldn't just create code without, talking with a technical professional about that.
So if there was any kind of a natural disaster or a whole neighborhood's on fire or something along those lines, essentially where everybody had to be evacuated, and you have 50, 60, 70 homes, and essentially there's only one point with a splitter, correct?
Right. And there should be 30, I believe, in the fire code is where you would need 2. So from a safety, like a life safety thing, 30. From more of a subjective planning, and this is what looks good in my neighborhood, and I'd like this kind of connectivity, walkability, all of those things. That's a different conversation, and that's the part that needed to look.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, this is more a general discussion. It seems like most development is in subdivisions, and by their nature, they're not connected. We don't have a pre-existing grid system that makes a lot of connections very easy. We have some main arteries where development happens to come, and it's just one batch of 40 houses at a time. And what have other places done that are in a similar, I guess, topography as we have, or state of transforming a lot of rural and farm roads to more arteries? How do we overcome kind of the pattern that's been going on for 10 years of subdivisions that aren't just connected because of how things are
Lack of
spreading out.
code and all
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then back to the 2 points of access. Also, having 2 real points gives fire trucks a place to enter and exit, turn around, even garbage trucks and stuff. If it's not much of a big, there's not at least a circle or a big square within a subdivision. So anyway,
Sure.
Yeah. So how do we go from subdivisions to a more integrated city like we see in the dream and the comprehensive plan?
Well, I give you props for a really great question. And the reason I think it's a great question is because I posed it to our transportation. Excuse me. I need a Kleenex real quick.
Hey, does anybody have any dad jokes to tell? Yeah, dad jokes
Oh.
while we're waiting.
Isn't this an open mic?
Mhm.
I don't know any jokes.
Yeah. Nothing that's public meeting worthy.
That was super embarrassing. I apologize for that.
No worries.
I had a sneezing fit right before you all walked in here. So what I was going to say is, and I was just trying to make a joke, but I think your question is really a good one. As part of the conversation I had with John Pascal with Transpo Group was, a lot of cities do have a network and a plan and a map that kind of lays out where those major arterials will be and where those minor arterials will be, and kind of puts in place that in their transportation master plan. And he gave me an example of, I believe the city of Kirkland has a master plan in place where they took the time, they had to review that as part of their transportation master plan update. And it would align with your comprehensive plan review as well, right? But taking a look, talking with citizens, talking about things about where those street networks belong, where maybe connectivity from a pedestrian standpoint goes as well, and bicycling. We're looking at complete streets nowadays as well when we review any of our subdivisions and plans. So that's one thing, is we would take a different review and look at the way that you would lay out streets in our community and say, this is where those streets will go. And we need like 3 minor arterials for every mile, and we need at least 1 arterial every mile. We do have some constraints in our community as we move to the south and talk about, the hillside, and a lot of, creeks and rivers are coming in. So we would have to talk about how that develops as part of the review. So I think that's one thing. Another is, as the subdivision codes are updated to meet comprehensive plans, and when you talk about connectivity, putting standards in your code at the same time as you're going to be reviewing not only the comprehensive plan, but the development standards that go along with the comprehensive plan vision that you put in place. That's when you're talking about, here's the standard that we'd like to see. This is the type of development we want to see in our community. And this is the standard that gets adopted as policy to drive how that is laid out. So those two things work hand in hand together as you develop that comp plan, develop the transportation master plan, and then also get into the world of code updates. So that's why it's so important that you tie that together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sharice? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I have a couple other things if you are
Okay.
all right.
Sure.
So another thing to mention is yesterday we had an interim controls that we took to City Council as a special session for plat extensions. If you have reviewed the Municipal Code Title 17 and also Title 20, talk about extensions, and they were contradictory with one another. And there was also some language in the Title 17 that didn't align with RCW. So we've had some requests for plat extensions here in the last month or so. And we've been working with our consultant and our internal staff to look at some language that would fit. So we needed to take through that interim controls before that plat extension would expire. So we did that yesterday. We put into place code language. And again, an interim control is 6 months. We need to have a public hearing within 60 days of the interim control. And then we'll look at the detail of that a little bit more. But anyway, so the plat extension language used to read that it needed to go to City Council to extend the plat. We changed that to say that the DCD director could extend the plat for a year. And then the code also referred to needing to come into current compliance with the plat requirement, or into current compliance with code requirements as it would relate to the subdivision itself. So if you had a phase subdivision and you had like four phases, you could be through phase 2 and then you needed an extension perhaps. You already have your street layouts in a certain way. You've had this design. We've changed the code standards in the last 3 to 5 years. And all of a sudden, what you have in place and how that flows together wouldn't work unless you did a complete update. So that's not really an extension. You would need to go through a plat alteration or something instead. So we changed that language to state that they would be adopted as that the extension would be adopted as as it was approved previously. So anyway, and so we need to dive into that language a little bit more. We put that together pretty quickly, and we have extended a plat as of today. But one thing we had talked about internally, and I also mentioned it yesterday at the city council meeting, was the need for evaluating supply chain. We've had serious requests by our development community for extensions because the supply chain shortage, the increase in the amount of cost for supplies, things like that. So they wanted us to talk about that a little bit, and I think that maybe we can evaluate that as part of the interim controls as we get deeper into the language. But it will come back to you. We'd want you to look at it first before council sees it again, other than the public hearing on that. Right now, we have one more plat that we would need to consider for a plat extension coming up. August is when it would expire. But some of the considerations there are also, what type of language do you need to put in place, and what are the criteria in which you need to really deep dive and consider? Are adequate public facilities required for an extension? They should be required for the plat itself. But, some things that get in the way of the review, or how do we review the details of the plat. So we'll be diving in as a team to see. And what I mean by that is, if the roads were wider and we needed to consider what those roads might look like over time if we're trying to extend that plat, or if they needed to meet stormwater requirements and those don't vest, right? What does the stormwater, what would be the process as a plat extension, something we need to consider for a stormwater extension, some things like that. But it's early in stages. Just know that we'll come back to you and we need to talk about it and dive deep into plat extensions. It was, again, one of those things where we've mentioned that we have a lot of code that's out of date or needs to be addressed. And that is one that we had to be reactionary on, unfortunately. We try to get ahead of them. Sometimes we fail, but anyway, so that's something to be looking forward to. Another thing we have is the comprehensive plan. We've been working on public participation plan, the work program. You had Bill Grimes and Aaron here at the last meeting, and I hope that you really enjoyed getting to know them and talking. And so they're putting together kind of the summary right now of, the experience that they had meeting with the public and having those one-on-one conversations, which I think is really valuable. Preliminarily, I've heard, housing is a big concern, which we all know. Some interest in tourism in our community and what that could be. Business and economic development's really important to those folks that met with them. But what that means is we'll see that we're planning our next steps of, do we do that vision workshop? We were talking about perhaps mid-April, but we might go a little longer. They want to get that right. So it might be May, or they might want to do it together with the 3-day workshop that they want to do studio style in one of our business fronts or something. So Emily and I have started reaching out to, different spaces that might be available, property owners, or different, spaces that you can rent out, to see what might be the way to go about that. So that's in the works. So if you know of any great place that would be fun to do, like a studio 3-day, like you're working, you put the stuff on the walls, you stop, you come back the next day, then you're working some more, you continue that process. So at the end of the 3 days, you're going to see the work of day 1, day 2, day 3, and then they'll summarize everything in that 3-day workshop. So yeah, if you have any ideas, please let us know. We're also trying to finalize some of our grants since we have the work program now. We've heard from Commerce on all 3. We need to just modify our scope a little bit on some of those and then finalize those. So Bill and Aaron and Emily and I are working on that right now too. So there's some progress forward, but I think we're excited to get it going. I don't know if you had the opportunity to go to sequimagine.org and take a look at what we have there. We received did you see it yet? Aaron was going to send us the latest on the logo.
Yes.
Oh, right. Is it worth sharing? Can we share that?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, let me pull it
Do you guys
up.
want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
And
give me a
since
sec
you know
pull
how to
up my
share,
email.
Emily,
Mhm.
please,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Before Emily goes, can I ask a plat question?
Sure.
When you say a plat extension, you're talking about when a developer goes in phases, I assume.
It's preliminary plat extension, and it could be in phases or it could be for one solid subdivision.
Okay, and the timeline that they have for if it's a development all at once, what's their timeline for completing it? Isn't
5
it 3
years.
years?
5 years is the timeline that you get for a plat. It's 3 years for a binding site plan.
Okay, and so
Or you're talking about preliminary, right? Or did you say final? Preliminary, yeah.
Yeah.
Because final is what you get at the end of the
right
process.
after everything's complete.
Yeah.
So, and an extension is a year extension?
The extension is a year extension. In some of the prior subdivisions that we've approved, they put conditional language in the approval that gave them 2 years. So we have to honor that whenever we have a condition of approval that gave them the ability to do 2 extensions. But our current language, as we've written in the interim controls, is 1 year.
Okay, and I'm trying to form a question here because 5 or 6 years is a very long period of time. And this is going in one direction. They're simply asking for an extension based on what was agreed to in their development 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. And so a lot of the time, if it's a phase development, they usually have been working on a phase and then they're coming in for the next site construction permit, which is, when they start working on the ground.
And is there no room for the other direction? Like, hey, you guys, it's been 6 years and some things have changed in the community. Would you consider adding this, and this to your next phase development?
So usually when you get to that point, then you're asking for a complete redesign. And why aren't you just doing a replat or a plat alteration or something like that? But also I would need to look at the vesting standards in detail because that's part of what we were running into.
Okay.
And what I mean is like they were approved to this standard and they vested and they were developing there. And that was part of the discussion is if you are then requiring them to meet all current standards with an existing subdivision, what's the extension for? Like, why would you even do an extension? So my experience with this, the first time around was when we were in the recession and we had so many subdivisions that were started or had changed ownership and then they wanted to continue moving. And then the state gave an extension up to, I believe, 10 years if that was approved, before 20, I can't remember the exact dates, but the state made this extension thing happen. And so we had a number of subdivisions that had been approved like 10 years prior that were coming in for, the building permit and everything. We didn't I think we had maybe one at that time that came in for a request for extension. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But the point being that they were showing hardship and needed the extension at that time because they were, the economy had tanked and they stopped developing. A lot of them went bankrupt. A lot of, the dirt had moved and then they just left it there. And with this particular case, the reason that I bring that back up is because we've had the development community say supply chain in 5 years and things like that. So I'm not saying that we have to do that. I'm saying we need to probably think about that as we're evaluating their requests. And we're also comparing that to the value added in the community itself and, what's best for the community versus what's best for the development community. I mean, those are all those things that you balance as a planning commission when you're making your recommendation. So it really, you're going to be recommending the policy on that. So if you think that it's a viable, statement and that we do have a drag in housing and that could push, us out further for developing housing. That's one way to think about it. Another is, well, we have current standards that we'd really like them to build to. And so maybe the answer is no. You could have many thoughts on that.
Has there ever been an extension that has been denied?
I don't know the answer to that question. Not recently. We haven't had a lot of extension requests, and Emily just put together a list of the current preliminary plats and binding site plans right now that we have. And we only have about 8. And the majority of those would expire in 26 or 27. And we have one that's coming up again for this year. None in 25 that I noted.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, just the one in August.
Kind of leads into what I think where Jeff might be going. We're looking at 2 points of access as for the interim controls. So if you had a preliminary plat out there that didn't have the 2 points and they came forward for an extension and they only had a single point, then that might be something that you would not want to grant an extension on because you're changing the code, but you've given them approval on something that is now obsolete. So that would be something if it came forward for an extension to the Planning Commission or as a matter of policy, you might want to think about that.
Yeah, that's part of it. But for me, it's also, why not even, is there a way to just engage and say, well, we'd like to grant you an extension. Would you be willing to do 1 or 2 things to help the community out? And here are the things.
It's kind of a bribe, Jeff.
No, because it's always going in one direction. Why doesn't, I guess I'm not forming the question right. If the developers want to help the community, why not ask them to? Why not say,
Well,
I know
you could look at it, but
6 years
completing
ago
the
we
plat, they're
approved
helping
this.
the community by giving housing availability.
That's
If
one
it's-
aspect of a help to community.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And
That's
that's
true.
That's how they
Look at it.
move forward. But I'm
Right.
just saying, if the plat were not up to the present code, then an extension might not be warranted. Sometimes plats 5 years ago don't have the same standards applied to them.
They don't. Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, that's my
that's-
point.
Yeah,
Is why not even
bring it current.
ask Mr. or
Well,
Mrs.
that's what-
Developer, would you consider?
That
blah,
aspect,
blah.
yes, yeah.
So you would only in that particular, I mean, I think this is something that you'll want to get into discussion as we roll this out. But, you have there's a range of requirements. You could be very strict and say, you must meet the standards of today. Well, vying that we would be able to do that and that vesting wouldn't get in the way. That you must meet the standards of today and we're not going to grant any extensions, or that maybe along that scale and range, you would say something like, we have the following criteria to evaluate a plat extension, and we're going to evaluate against these things. And if you can't meet one of these or two of these or all of these or something, then we don't grant an extension. Or it could be we always grant extensions. You could have many ways to look at it, but it's always the devil in the details, I think, when you're talking about that criteria. But I think this is a really good start to a mindful conversation, or just a well designed conversation. And when we get into it and start putting the details to it, you're going to need to remind us, like, okay, we want to know about this. Well, how would this impact, a plat extension, and why? And, at some point, the 2 points of access will be evaluated. And it will change dramatically the look and feel of what a subdivision would be if they needed that extension. I think you also want to consider what's that financial impact to that developer that put down the money to say, we're going through the process of, and we're going to develop this. We might need a little bit more time, but we know what it's going to cost us. We've done the pro forma. Generally, this is, what we're going to get back, and they know that. And then if it starts changing on them, and they only know that they have 5 years, that might, be an impact to them in some way. So just being mindful of all the different ways that this decision could impact the citizens and their ability for connectivity, for instance, versus weighing the benefit of having more housing in the community. Some of those things I think apply, and I don't think that there's a right answer. There may be a better answer, and that there's a Sequim answer, and you guys will get to it.
Okay, thank you. Larry, I saw that you had your hand up at one point. No? Okay. Yes, Alex.
I just want to understand, let's say, with the final plat approval, 5 years for the development to go on. What does that include? Because it seems like a lot of, I see, let's say at Willow Creek, they're still building out odds and ends of patches here and there, besides just new phases gradually. And it seems like there's a certain capacity of new houses that can be built in a year, given the shortage of skilled workers of all the various trades that are needed. It seems like we maybe have 30 or 40, I don't know, new houses a year or something on average. So, whatever the figure is. And so it would seem like unreal to expect someone to build out 82 in another 2 years or something. And with the increase of interest rates, besides the cost of materials, a lack of supply chain, increased prices everywhere, the interest rates being high for mortgages, is that impacting things? Are we going to see delays like on Mariner Outlook or Rolling Hills or whatever?
I think, let me try to tackle your question where you started about what's the process to get to final plat from preliminary. So your first step from preliminary plat is you submit the application. You are defining what the road networks look like, where the lots are going to be, what the open space is, where the utilities are going to run, what's your stormwater going to do, how am I providing my transportation network, and doing an evaluation through a transportation study, any special studies that would relate to archaeological finds. All these things are coming into play as you're talking with all the, like doing a SEPA would be one. So you're talking to all the state agencies and the various different agencies around here that would need to evaluate and give comment. Where's the irrigation ditches? How does that play into this? So that's the get-go. That's what you're starting with. And we go through a process with the hearing examiner to evaluate that. 90 days, Emily? Is it 90 or? Yeah, 90 days for that. But that means 90 days when the clock is running. It doesn't mean 90 days total. So if we give comments, so we really take in an application, and when we have it, they've paid, and we determine it's a complete application, and we start the review of it. We're starting to look at all the details as it is relating to our municipal code standards, and our engineering team is also looking at the engineering standards and tech specs and things like that to give some high level comments back to them that, hey, your preliminary plat is starting to look like something that we would be able to approve in Sequim when we take it to the hearing examiner. We do something that's called a revise and resubmit letter to them saying, these are the comments that when we reviewed it, it didn't meet the standard and you need to make these changes prior to going to hearing examiner. There's a time for public comment. There's a time for a neighborhood meeting. There's a time for the SEPA to go out, and that's when the public notice is out. So that's, we'll say 90 days, but think about that could be probably 6 months realistically when you're working through the details. Once they get that approval, then they go to site construction permit. So think about preliminary plat is like 30% design if you were an engineer, but that's not exactly it. And then they got to go through and get approval for the site construction permit, which is all of the design. Everything that the engineer is going to see on site when they break ground and it needs to be built to this standard, that's what they need to see. That takes as long as it takes. And so they have a required list of checklists that they need to submit to the engineering team. We'll also review it in planning when they send it in to make sure that it's meeting the standards and conditions of approval from the preliminary plat. So that could take a while. I mean, Emily, how long have you seen some of the site construction permits go? You can go 8 months and that's easy, but it really does. It's kind of as quick as the applicant is willing to work and can work, right? So if we give them comments back and then they sit on it and then they respond to us 5 months down the road, we can't do anything about that. If they give us comments back immediately and then we respond back, they can go faster. But it could be a year and a half, 2 years down the line easily before you're even breaking ground. Then you break ground, you put in all of the public infrastructure. Then we have to do inspections to make sure the infrastructure is correct. There's some things that are bonded. And then once everything is fine and good there, then you can move forward with your final plat. Take the final plat through, make sure that it meets all the standards that it was, approved by for the preliminary plat. And then you have final plat standards, make sure it meets all that. You do Mylar, you get that recorded at the county. Then you can pull building permits. So that's, you could be 2.5 years down the line. If you're an individual builder that is local, has some resources, you're probably sourcing some of that next building from the previous building, get that sold, you're moving forward, you do it in a slower pace. If you are part of a really large home, developer like Pulte Homes or some agency like that, where they have their financing and their building and their supply chain and all that stuff like connected, they can build fast. They can put up 30 homes, 40 homes, 50 homes, 60, just depends on who they have on the ground that they can actually use to build, but they do have their own staff that they bring with them too. So it just depends on what type, if you're doing development with a small organization or a larger organization as you scale that. And then you had some other questions. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Yes. So from the time of the building permit being granted, and that's 5 or how many years?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see why people would want, some developers want extensions. Of course, that's maybe even they haven't even gotten construction going yet. Perhaps.
Once they have the final
You
plat,
can't build unless you have final plat.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Right.
And the
You
building
can't pull the
permits have been
building
granted,
permit.
and then they still need more time.
No, she's talking
Oh.
about she's talking about the preliminary plat.
Yes,
They can't build on the property until they're
right.
through final.
The extensions that the city council convened on yesterday or something, that extensions for building permits, wasn't it?
no, it's for
Oh.
preliminary
No.
plat.
Oh, preliminary. Excuse me. That's what I wanted to understand. Okay. Thank you very much.
Did that description of the process help?
Oh, yes. I was thinking more in the building phase, but I was mistaken that it was in the preliminary phase. And I'm okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Larry.
I do have a question,
Okay.
or I remembered what it was.
Okay.
As we're evaluating, will you give us the, what the county standards are, what the other city standards are? Because I know some of the builders certainly have comparisons that they're doing. So as we're evaluating, is it a 5-year with a no renewal or hard renewal on
Mhm.
getting back to the new standards? I think that would be helpful for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Do you have anything else for us, Therese?
I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay.
I know we do, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anything for the good of the order? Yes, Karen.
I would like, if we go to squimwa.gov, to the calendar of events, I would like to see the Planning Commission on the calendar of events, as is the City Arts Advisory Commission meeting and City Council. I
It should
think
be there, but maybe we're,
should be, but it's not.
Emily, are we having some breakdowns with our website?
I just would like us to be on there, and then if you view all events, we're not on there either. So
We have,
we have our page
yes,
and
and
we have
when,
our calendar.
yes, and syncing those, sometimes it doesn't talk to
Yeah.
each other, right? So, yeah.
We just have I have a glitch, and I think the people would like to see kind of a little more. So just for the good of the order.
Thank you. That's our expectation as well. And we've had some issues with the website as it's been rolled out. So I'm glad you pointed that out, and we'll get on that. Can I go back? I forgot. Emily had pulled up the website logo designs, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
we forgot to talk about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to turn the lighting down a little bit. Dun, dun, dun. Um, we could email it. I got to find it. There it is. Want me to send it? Okay. We'll email it to you. Do you all have your emails up? Hmm.
So, and that logo is for, is that for the process of redoing the,
It's like the marketing.
Okay.
Yeah, for the whole comp
okay,
plan.
it's- okay.
Kind of like I think you did Squim 120, I believe, the first in the last comprehensive plan. You remember? Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so it should be in your email.
Okay. And it's just not working for sharing. Okay. We'll have to put it in for the public record in some way. Okay. Does everybody see it?
Yeah.
Got here. Took that long across the room.
So is that just for our reference? Just,
It's going to be like the branded item on when we promote the comp plan. It will be on the website, all of that stuff.
okay.
It will be on, documents as we share documents that relate to the comp plan.
Okay.
Squimagine.org.
Okay.
So that sun is actually a sequin, right? You see, they added a bicycle in for us too, for the ODT.
Yeah. Okay, very cool.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. All right, anything else for the good of the order? No? Okay. How about an adjournment? Anybody like to make a motion?
I move we adjourn at 6:17.
Okay. We have a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, meeting is adjourned at 6:17.